Companies that have a founder's brand that work alongside with the business brand lift significantly greater. Instead of a 1 plus 1 equals 2, it's a 1.33 plus 1.33 equals 2.66. It's actually much, much, much better.
Welcome to the Legacy Branding Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Beauprelant, here to guide you through the journey of selling your business and building a personal brand that leaves a lasting impact. On the show, we'll explore real-life founder stories, expert insights, and actionable strategies to help you navigate the transition, avoid post-sale crisis, and create your impact-driven legacy brand. Whether you're thinking of selling, building to sell, or already on the other side, this podcast is your go-to resource for making your next evolution your best one yet. Let's dive in. Today on the Legacy Branding Podcast, I'm joined by Charles Gaudet. He's a business growth strategist, author of The Predictable Profits Playbook, and host of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. Charles has been called the go-to coach for 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs, the CEO whisperer, and even the busiest sales coach in the US for a reason. He helps founders simplify, scale, and create predictable, sustainable growth. Charles brings a mix of tactical brilliance and high-performance strategy to his work, and his insights have been featured in Forbes, Inc., Fox Business, and many more. Welcome to the show, Charles.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I've always enjoyed when we've connected. So I'm thankful that you're bringing your brilliance to the podcast today. I wanted to start by asking, so you've helped thousands of entrepreneurs scale beyond 7 and 8 figures. And in your experience, I wanted to know, what do you think the most successful and ultimately sellable businesses have in common?
There's roughly about 6 things that they have in common. The first one is they have a very strong, unique advantage. In other words, right now, the average consumer is looking at about 36 different sources of information before making a buying decision. So they go through the cycle of exploration and evaluation. So they're looking at you and they're looking at all the competitors. One of the things that they want to know is what makes you different. We inadvertently make it so difficult for the consumer to make a decision because we don't have our unique advantage right out there. Many of us say, well, we have better quality, we have better service, we care more, all these other nice things, but that's kind of expected. But what actually makes you different? So the first one would be a unique advantage. The second one would be that the company would have to not be dependent on the founder. So in other words, independent of the founder, right?
Yep.
So the more the company is dependent on you, the less valuable the company is. And we noticed during COVID that even companies that have been around for a decade, founder got sick, they were gone for a few weeks, they came back and the business had disappeared. And that becomes a very strong issue, a lot of vulnerability when a company is founder dependent. The third one is you look for multiple different sources of leads and revenue. Most companies can sort of get to that $1 to $3 million mark on word of mouth and referrals. You need to be able to go beyond word of mouth and referrals to create more robustness and predictability. So you need to get beyond word of mouth and referrals. Then we go from there, and it would be MRR or ARR, so monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue. Now, we like to see a minimum of 50% of total revenue being recurring revenue. Or I should say industry standard is minimum 50, but we like to see closer to 60. So when you have a high degree of recurring revenue, then you don't have to keep chasing your tail from one month to the next, wondering where the next sale is going to come from, and you get reduced stress, and that really tends to compound. Then you want to have retention. So your churn rate should be 5% or lower. In other words, so if it's 5% or lower per month and you're over the course of a year, that means you're still keeping a bare bones minimum of 40% of those clients. And again, when you have strong ARR, you have different ways of growing the business, it helps to compound. See, a lot of people don't understand the impact of that when they look at their business. And let's say they have 100 clients and they're like, oh, we want to grow by 35% next year, which is a very conservative number, but 35% next year. That means they have to replace all 100 clients and then add 35 more. And then if they want to do it again the following year, they have to replace all 135 clients and then go beyond that. But when you have strong recurring revenue and a high retention rate, then if all you did was bring in the same amount of clients this year that you had next year, you're automatically going to have that compounded growth. Growth becomes a lot easier. Then finally, it would be data intelligence. We say guesswork is a cancer of all business. Most people aren't aware of their data, enough so they know the levers to pull and the push. And it doesn't really matter the size of the company. It's interesting. I've had conversations with CEOs doing 500 million, and they'll tell me things like, oh, yeah, I do marketing. And I'll go back and I'll say, well, then how effective are you at creating demand? And they look at me like I'm speaking a different language, right? And they're not aware of that because there's so many different, really important levers to pull and to push to get the results that we're looking for. And some of the questions, like how effective are you at creating demand? Like these are the things they don't teach in business school. That's why so many of the people are looking for that. They're just focused on how many leads and revenue. But we could keep going down that rabbit hole. But hopefully that answers your question, Laura.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was fantastic. I loved it. It makes sense. Your business is called Predictable Profits, and predictable profits is such an important part of running a business. And I think it's really exactly what so many founders want, especially when they're preparing to sell. The people listening to this podcast are in that position where they've built a successful business and maybe they don't have that predictable profit. So they're thinking about this sale. So I'd love to know, why do you think that predictability is so difficult for so many business owners to achieve?
Well, first of all, you can tell just by your response that you're far more seasoned than the average person, right? Because it's when you get to a certain level of being seasoned, you look for predictability and consistency. Before you get to that point, you're chasing the shiny pennies, you're looking for the spikes here and there. Fast growth is much more attractive than predictability, though they don't realize that predictability can also create fast growth. But
Right.
when you look at the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies, 66% of them will go out of business, shrink in size, or be disadvantaged as they sold, because fast growth and predictable growth, they're two different strategies in of itself.
Oh, wow. 66%.
66% within 5 to 8 years first get invested. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a sobering number, really.
It is. And for me and for many of the more seasoned CEOs and founders, those that are like ready to stop chasing everything and get down to business, predictability is much more calming when you know exactly within a reasonable parameter what next month and the future months are and so forth, are going to achieve. And you build a lot of robustness into the organization so that you have something that works, you put a system around it, and now you go on and you build the next one. You're just constantly building, building, building. And it's a great place to be. It's also allows you a position so that you create economic independence.
Yeah.
When you build a robust organization, you don't look at economy as good or bad, you look at them as different. And it allows you to succeed regardless of where the economy is going.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned something about a business being too focused on the founder, right? They are the business. And I want to go back to that because that is definitely something we work with. We help from a different perspective. We help build a personal brand for the founder and tease them apart from the business brand. Because what I see is that quite often the founder and the business, like you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. And especially if they want to sell or grow and stop being the bottleneck, they have to stop being everything in the business. I see signs from a brand perspective, but I'd love to know from your perspective, what are the signs that the founder is too involved and what is the way for them to pull back so they are not so much the driver of the business without losing momentum?
So if you think of an org chart, oftentimes we see it kind of looks like a pyramid. You've got the CEO at the top, and then you've got leadership all the way down. That's how an org chart should look like. But the reality is, for most small business owners, it looks a little bit more like a target. The CEO is right in the middle, and then everything then points back to the CEO. So every decision has to be passed through the CEO. They create all the strategy. They have the marketing strategy. They're the CFO. They work. All the delivery is somehow involved with the CEO and so forth. And they spend so much time working in the business rather than on the business. A lot of people, they know that growing a business is hard, and they think the hardest part of growing a business is a startup. But there's two really hard parts. There's a startup part, and then there's this part around that 1 to 3 million, when you realize that hard work, word of mouth, and referrals isn't enough to get you beyond to where you're at. Now you got to put some strategy behind that. Becomes another really, really hard part. But this is where founders, they have to change the way that they've grown their business, because from startup to about that 1 million mark, everything was really dependent on them. They had to be very resourceful. Actions plus resources equal goal, right? They ended up having to wear every hat, bring the business to where it is. But now, in order for them to break from that 1 to 3 million, they have to be able to delegate And if you're going to delegate, you have to also make sure that you have the right systems in place to create consistency. Like, Laura, if you think about the work that you do, to be able to hand that off and have the same level of quality that you're able to do yourself, it creates processes, systems. Like there's so many things that have to be put in place in order to make that happen. And that becomes very difficult. Or breaking free from founder-led sales when the founder is responsible for all the closing. And then being able to go get away from that closing. A lot of times they turn around and they go, well, to do this, then I'm going to write a job ad. I'm going to go to LinkedIn. I'm going to post a job ad, look at people's resumes. Maybe they have industry experience. Maybe they have some sales training. I'm going to bring them in, hire them, and then hope they close. And seldom does that work, because sales and hiring is far more than just a resume and sales training. For most of us, for you and for me, like it took me well over a year to figure out how to actually consistently sell myself, right?
Yeah.
We want to know what are the stories, how to handle the objections, and so forth. Yet we think that we can bring somebody on board and just automatically they'll be able to do it for us. That
Right.
doesn't work. Then again, the business is mostly grown from the founders' network, word of mouth and referrals, and their friends. Once you then start to hit everybody you know, again, it's like it gets very, very difficult. So there's an important part of a founder's brand. Every business should have a founder's brand, because that founder's brand helps to elevate the business, it helps to tell a story. That part is essential. And we've run the data and we've seen that companies that have a founder's brand that work alongside with the business brand, that both of them lift significantly greater. Instead of a 1 plus 1 equals 2, it's like a 1.33 plus 1.33 equals 2.66. Like it's actually much, much, much better. And you'll usually see more leads coming in on the founder's brand at a lower cost than in the business brand when the same ad is run simultaneously. That part is really, really important and essential to both creating, capturing, and nurturing that demand, having both of them. But just because you have a founder's brand doesn't make the business dependent on the founder. All it does is it tells a why you're in business. How did the company even begin? Like nobody expects, if you take Tony Robbins as an example, nobody expects when you call Tony Robbins' office that you're going to get Tony Robbins on the phone,
Yeah.
right? But he's got a really, really powerful brand that allows his brand in the company. Or Richard Branson, nobody expects that when you call Virgin Airlines that you're going to get Richard Branson on the phone. That doesn't work. But everybody knows Richard Branson. And I know there's a lot of controversy around Elon Musk. There's Elon, and then there's Tesla, and there's SpaceX. But if you think about all the greatest brands in the world, you're going to notice that those that have a higher retention rate and a loyal following have a founder associated with the brand.
Yeah.
For example, let's take the opposite. Do you know who the founder of ExxonMobil is?
Not a clue.
No, but if you found gas that was 5 cents cheaper across the street, would you just go to get gas there?
Yeah. Might depend on if I get points on my card or there's some perk or something. But yeah, I have no particular loyalty to a gas company.
Zero loyalty.
Whoever's cheapest.
Yeah. But for many people, like Apple, like they become very loyal fans of Apple, and they were for a long time because they knew the story behind Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I talk about that often. So we're definitely on the same page in terms of the value of a founder brand and the business and how it can elevate it. I've got stats too that show how much more reach they get, how leads convert greater. And so I think there is huge value in that. So I'd love to know, you've worked with some top performers in the world and really high value companies. And I'd love to know what mindset shifts that you find are essential when it comes to scaling and predictable profits and even stepping away from a business.
So that's a great question. What's interesting, I started the Beyond Seven Figures podcast with this idea that I was going to get some of the greatest strategies from the most amazing thinkers on the planet. And now we've got over a couple hundred episodes, something around there. So many of the conversations, the majority of them, it came down to mindset. They're all saying mindset was really the big differentiator between success and failure. There's discipline, which is a big part of it. There's consistency. There's being able to push forward when things get tough and things get hard. That is a mindset shift. It's like going to the gym. You're going to see those people that just want to take it easy and they'll grab like the 10-pound weights and they'll just do their motion and they're not straining. Then they put the weights down and they wonder why they can never get anywhere. And then you see the other people that are really kind of pushing themselves. And then when it starts to get painful, they're getting that one more rep and one more rep. And then they start to get a lot more of that growth and that strength. The same thing happens with business. There's this underlying theme that they're embracing discomfort. They don't see fear as something bad. They see fear as more of an opportunity. They're constantly leaning in and trying to push themselves more and more and more. But then there's also this understanding, and this is a mindset too, that virtually every single guest that I spoke with and the most successful clients that I work with, it's not about making money, which is my company's predictable profits. You would think it's all about making money, right? But it's understanding that you get paid in direct proportion to the value that you provide others. So if you deliver an exceptional experience and exceptional value, then you're going to be able to get paid more. And so there's this mindset of saying, okay, what is it that my clients want? And how do I create such an exceptional experience and value for them that they want to just stay with me and just keep working with me and tell their friends and all this other jazz. So that is another important part of mindset. And I guess just finally, as we're kind of talking, it's that they're extremely curious, extremely curious. In fact, the more successful they get, the more curious they are. It's like the more successful they get, the less they believe they know.
That is an interesting perspective. Yeah. Do you think that's a trait of all entrepreneurs? Like, is that a commonality you see?
The successful ones, you are going to see the people that believe that they have all the answers, the people that stop learning and that stop asking
Mm.
questions. They're usually the first ones to struggle and then no longer exist.
Hey, founders, quick shameless plug for the sponsor of this podcast and my company, Lab Creative, where we help ambitious founders untangle their personal brand from their business so they can position the company to sell and build a personal brand for their next evolution. If that sounds like you, head to labcreative.ca to check out our work and to book a call with me. Or if you want to just dip your toe in first, grab a copy of the Founders Brand Playbook. It's our free step-by-step guide to building a brand that attracts premium buyers and creates opportunities for you post-sale. You can download it at labcreative.ca/playbook. I love your analogy about the gym too. One thing I've learned is that the growth comes in the discomfort, right? It comes from doing the hard things. It doesn't come from lifting the light weights. It comes from straining and lifting the heavier weights. And I think that is also life and business. And when you practice doing those things, it makes the next time something challenging comes into your life, whether it's personal or business, you're better equipped from a mindset perspective, I believe, to handle kind of whatever life throws at you. Because you've laid that groundwork and you're like, oh, I've been here before.
Sure.
Maybe not this situation, but I know how to deal with this.
I mean, think about like the problems when you started your business that you were dealing with. Like back in the day, it probably
Yeah.
felt huge. Now
Yeah.
you probably deal with these things on a regular basis and you don't even think twice about it. It's just like, oh, this is what I do and no big deal. And when you think about the problems that you're faced with now, like that might seem big, then a year from now or 3 years from now, you're going to look at it and be like, wow, I remember when I thought that was a big problem.
Yeah.
I was actually with Tony Robbins in Whistler. Tony, he was asking me about the problems that I had. And I'm like, well, I'm working through this and I'm working through this, but I can't help but ask, like, where's this coming from? And he's like, I'm sizing you up. And I'm like, huh? He says, big people have big problems. Little people have little problems. Little people tend to run away from their problems, but big people will create big problems for themselves. And you can tell the size of the person by the size of the problems that they have. So I'm just trying to figure out, what are your biggest problems? As I shared it with him, he was like, do you think Richard Branson would lose like 1/10 of a second of sleep over your big problems? And I'm like, yeah, probably not. Probably.
Leave it to Tony Robbins to give you a bit of a reality check, right?
Yeah. So, but it was nice because then he encouraged me to really lean in more and think bigger and create bigger problems.
Yeah, it is interesting. I remember years ago, I don't remember how it came up, but somebody said, I guess I was struggling to like hit a revenue target that I had set. And they said, this revenue you're hitting today, that was what you could only have wished for a few years ago.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah, that was something that I was like, I couldn't even imagine doing that. And now here I am kind of beating myself up because that next ceiling seems to be eluding me, or that next level. It's like, oh, yeah, you do have to reflect back and look at the places you've been before. And it gives you such a different understanding of your own journey. Oh, yeah, this too shall pass. I can move through this and I will get to that next level. And it's also about enjoying, that place where you're at when you're there, not always wanting to be in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think there is this part, though, of entrepreneurs that one of the struggles is that we need to be able to take a step back and just be grateful for what we've accomplished and how far we've come.
Yeah.
But that actually is really difficult because we're builders and we're creators,
Yeah.
and we know that the moment we stop leaning in and trying to grow our business, that's when market share starts being taken away from us. When we get comfortable, it just the next wave is going to be struggle. When I look at where I've lost the most amount of money in my business, I've always had my own business, never had a quote unquote real job, right? In my entire life. And anytime I've lost over $1 million, it was always after a period of being comfortable. Every single time, no question, because things started to go really well after I worked so hard. I finally was like, let me just relax a little bit, enjoy,
Take your foot off the
take
pedal.
my foot off the pedal, and just enjoy. And then it was almost like my competitors are just waiting for me to just finally be like, oh, good. He's taking his eye off the ball. He's relaxed. And then I would end up going through this period of struggle.
I'm sure you're not the only one who's experienced that. I'm sure there's somebody listening that's like, oh, yeah, that's exactly my story too.
Yeah, we get to that point where we just learn to just keep leaning in. Though, as we become more resourceful, we're able to then pay people to handle our headaches so that we can focus in on doing more of what's in our zone of genius. And that allows us to lean in, but without the same amount of hustle necessarily that we've had in the past. We can enjoy it a little bit more while we still lean in.
Yeah. Let's hope we can all enjoy the journey. It shouldn't all be struggle. I think it's a mix of the two, right? There's the struggle is where you learn and you grow, but if it's all struggle, then that's not super conducive to an enjoyable life either.
Yeah, you burn out. You can only redline for so long,
Yep.
right? We're like intellectual athletes. So if you think of an Olympian, recovery is just as important as training. So
Yeah.
you can train real hard, but then you need to be able to have that recovery. And the same thing, like we can work real hard, but we still need the ability to make sure the company is not dependent on us. We can work hard, but then take that 2 week vacation, or work hard, but then maybe take some time to focus on designing a new strategy, a new product offering, a new whatever, and just be alone for a little bit and be in that space of where you begin to tinker. Just let your imagination go wild.
Yeah, I call that filling the well, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can't give from an empty cup. And so if I'm full from whatever that might be, whether it's a physical thing that I need to do, a mental thing, a vacation, that's when I find my creativity and my ideas and the expansion often happens in some of those quieter moments when I'm away from my desk, not when I'm here doing the work. And yet we're sort of in that grind and just stay sitting, stay at your desk. But for me, it is actually that getting away and then coming back renewed and refreshed. That is when I can bring my best to my team, to my clients, and to all the work that I do.
My COO had this conversation with me a couple weeks ago, and he goes, "What needs to happen for you to spend more time by the pool?" And I'm like, "What kind of question is
Oh, I
that?"
like that.
I'm like, "What happened?" And he's like, "No, because when you're able to do more of that, that's when the company grows, because you come back with ideas and strategies and insights that we can apply and we do better. But when you're working in the business," he's like, "we actually don't grow as fast. You're breaking things, you're getting in the way, you're a bottleneck." So he's like, "What do we need to do to get you to spend more time by the pool?"
I love that he's coming to you with that and just like telling you how it is and realizing that when you're too in the business, you're kind of meddling a little bit and getting in the way of things. So, yeah, go spend more time by the pool.
We, as entrepreneurs, we got two parts of our brain, right? We've got the visionary part, There's the execution part. But for most of us, the visionary part is very big. So it's great because we see all these opportunities and we can take in these opportunities and create something really marvelous. But our ability to execute, for the most part, is small. It's very hard. And when we try to execute, we're really not as good at it as we think we are. That's where we tend to bottleneck and mess things up a little bit. So in an ideal world, as companies are able to afford it and become more resourceful, the most powerful companies will have somebody who's the visionary and then somebody who's the executor. And that would be me and my COO. Like I'm the visionary and my COO is just like, okay, so all right, give it to me and then let me run with it. That is an awesome dynamic progressively as these companies begin to move from founder led everything to then, okay, let's break free from founder dependence to create founder independence. It's not just technologies and systems and whatnot, it's also going to be people.
I think that idea of the founder and the visionary and the executor is such an interesting place. And I think a lot of founders, we all start as both. And then it's not outsourcing the visionary piece, it's actually outsourcing the execution.
I've never seen in 15 years since I've been running Predictable Profits, I've never seen a situation where somebody outsourced the visionary part and ended up with consistent success. When I say visionary, there's a difference between creativity and visionary. Like it's okay to outsource creativity. When we say visionary, it's like, where's the business going? Like, where is it going? One of the important conversations that everybody should be having right now is how is AI going to disrupt my business and my industry within the next 6, 12, 18 months?
Yeah.
Every business, hands down, is going to be disrupted. Few people are actually prepared for that level of disruption because they're not having the right conversations. As long as you know what's coming, you can start preparing for it. These are conversations you have to have right now because you can build for it while you have the time. So it's like, okay, let's build for it. This is where I think, let's go, let's go, let's go. If you wait 6 to 12 months, you're going to be taking on water and you're going to be waiting for a life raft. And at that point, there's going to be a lot of like scarcity mindset and fear that goes on. We have to ask these questions. And the beautiful thing about the way that AI works is AI will also tell you how to compete against itself. So you can go very simply go to AI and say, please visit my website, familiarize yourself with my company, my services, the competitors in the industry as a whole. How do you believe that AI will disrupt my industry within the next 6 to 12 months? And it'll go ahead and it'll say, this is where I think it's going to be disrupting it. And say, okay, what skills and abilities do me and my team need to develop in order to maintain and build upon our competitive advantage within the next 6 to 12 months? It's like, okay, well, this is what needs to happen. And then it's like, okay, all right, now I understand at least the direction that I need to go in. It's going to really a really critical thing that needs to happen sooner than later.
Yeah, I definitely see that. That's why I've been so heavily involved in implementing AI in my business, building tools, seeing how it works, playing with things, and really keeping on understanding how it's going to impact my industry, which I know it will in a huge way in the branding world from a language, messaging, and design. A lot of things are shifting. I'm like, I need to be at the forefront of this, not trailing behind. Otherwise, we will be eaten alive. And so that's why I've been very active and keeping on top of everything that is happening. And I think that's a great advice. And I think from what you're saying too, anybody who's thinking of selling their business down the road, I mean, AI could totally disrupt that plan.
You're right.
If you don't have something implemented. And I think buyers are going to want to see that you have some level of AI integrated into your business.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I mean, right now, if you have a software program that doesn't have any element of AI, like it just feels like it's antiquated. It's kind of falling behind. We're getting more and more and more accustomed to using AI. As it stands right now, within reason, you can't give me a situation where AI can't already do it. I can't think about a current situation right now that AI can't do it. But the reason why it hasn't disrupted all industries across the board is because not enough people know how to do it yet. So it exists. They just don't know that it exists. So therefore, it's not disruptive. 6 to 12 months from now, more and more, they're going to start realizing that it does exist. And then they start to use it. As humans, it's interesting because we're wired to survive. So while we see AI might be taking things that we're currently doing away from us, what it's also doing is it's also creating opportunities, many of them which we never would have imagined or fathomed existed right now, but only became possible because of AI. When people say, well, Charlie, I mean, business coaching is going to be disrupted, right? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. No question. For sure, it's going to be disrupted. And they're like, well, are you worried? And I said, no, because the thing that I bring to the table is context. See, you could already go to AI and say, hey, create a marketing plan for me for blah, blah, blah business. But then if it was that easy, everybody would be doing it because it's still context. It's knowing the right questions to ask and then knowing the difference between a good plan and a bad plan, and then being able to implement it and execute it in the right way. I couldn't do your job in the same way that you do your job because you've got years and years and years of experience that you'll be able to look at something to know whether or not it is right or wrong and give it some feedback. Because all AI is an intelligent employee. And just like any employee, you don't just say, go do it and never check in and never offer any feedback and never. Instead, it has to be this dialogue that goes back and forth. You're still the painter. AI is then the paintbrush. Right? You're still the painter. So you still have to know what it is that you're painting.
It's also the quality of what you put into it. It's the questions you ask, the prompts you use, the challenging it. I do that on a daily basis. And I'm teaching my kids how to do that because whether they're not allowed to use it in school, but I'm like, use it as a brainstorm partner, as a way to help you study for things, as a way to. There's so many ways that we can use these tools and have it add to our lives rather than take away.
If everybody uses AI the same way, then there's no competitive advantage and nobody's going to benefit. My son, he's going to University of Florida next year. When we talked about college, I said, kid, you don't need the answers anymore. Much different than anything throughout history. You don't need answers. He's like, what are we talking about? I go, Branson, the most important thing you need to know is how to ask the right questions. And the competitive advantage of the people that are going to exist tomorrow are going to be those that are the most curious and can ask the questions that people don't even think to ask. So in college and wherever he is, I want him to remain curious. I want it, the more curious that he can be, the better. And part of building that curiosity, you do need knowledge for context to ask more questions. We also talked about earlier that the most successful people that I've met and worked with over the years, those are the people that realize and believe the more successful they are, the less they actually believe to know.
Yeah.
Because it only comes up with more questions, more possibilities, more this and that. It's that curiosity, it's the questions. That's where the leaders are going to dominate, not by having the answers, but having the right questions.
Yeah. What a gift that is to your son to arm him with that knowledge going into university. I've loved this conversation. I feel like we could talk for hours on all of these topics, but I do have one last question. So, this podcast is called Legacy Branding, and legacy is a big theme that I like to ask people about. So, I would love to know what legacy means to you and what the legacy is that you want to create for yourself.
It's a really great question. As soon as you said, what does legacy mean to me? I just got a picture that kind of came to mind. And that is, I want to be the shoulders for the next generation to stand on. For
Beautiful.
me, that is legacy, is how do you create the advantage for the next people? That's where I want my legacy, to be able to help the next group to become more successful than I've been able to achieve.
That's a beautiful legacy. And I believe that you live it every day in the work that you're doing and the way you're helping your kids and so many of the entrepreneurs that you work with.
Well, they make it easy because I love what I do with the people that I work with. When you enjoy the people you work with and the work that you do, you want people and everyone around you to succeed as much as possible. Just seeing everybody do well, that's even more important to me than just the money itself. I don't do this for the money. I do it because I love it when somebody just is able to reach one of their goals and do something awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, on that note, where can people find you? How can they learn about working with you? Get a copy of your book? Share the best way for people to connect with you.
Awesome. So predictableprofits.com is where they can find me. In fact, on predictableprofits.com, they can actually, under resources, they'll see book and they can just grab the book for free. They can also go to Amazon. If they want to go to Amazon and get it, or they can get the book for free at predictableprofits.com. Of course, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And so as long as they connect with me, telling everyone that, or telling me that they've been on this podcast, will accept it. So that would be look for me at Charles Gaudet on LinkedIn. And again, predictableprofits.com, and that's where they can find me.
Amazing. We'll make sure to add all of those links in the show notes. Charles, thanks again for being here, for all your amazing insights. I really loved our conversation. Thanks for tuning into the Legacy Branding Podcast. I hope today's episode has inspired and empowered you on your journey to building a brand that truly matters. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other founders who you think would benefit from listening. And if you're ready to take the next step in building your legacy brand, visit our website, labcreative.ca, to learn more and book a call. Don't forget to join us next time for more conversations that will help you navigate your transition and create your legacy. Until then, I'm Laura Beauperlant.